In this session, we're going to show you how to add a termination. I'm currently in the Build and Edit tool, and let's say I see I have Q1, which is a what is your gender. It's only got two options, male, female. If I want to have 100% of the folks taking the survey to be female, what I can do is add a termination in place. Now, there's two ways to do this. On the bottom of the question tree, very, very bottom left, there is an add logic or quota page button. If I click on this button, there is a quick term option, which is the default. I'll leave that as is in this case and hit add. This will be option number 1. You'll see that there is a UI where I can search for my questions. So if it's a very straightforward termination point, I can just search and say if Q1 equals 1 term. I'll hit create, and what will happen is you'll see in the question tree, you will see a page that appears right after Q1 because that's the question that I selected from the dropdown, so the term will be inserted right after the question that I just indicated. And if I just refresh really quickly, it will also open up, just clicking on that page too. This is the page that was inserted. It's purple, but it also has this little icon next to it indicating that it's logic. So this will open up the termination point that I just created. So only if Q1 equals 1, terminate using code Q1 term 1. So that Q1 term 1 is created by default, meaning that because you used the UI, you looked at Q1, it's the first term that you selected off of Q1, so that's why it's called Q1 term 1. Now you can, if you wanted to, move this around. So let's say, for example, your end client says, I want to move all of the terms after page 3, or whatever this question is. Let's say it's Q2. I can just drag and drop that right after that, and I'm done. I've just moved my termination point. I can move it back if I wish, but I can also drag and drop it and move it wherever I want it to go. Another option you could do is to click on that same button, bottom left, very, very first button on the bottom left of the question tree, and I select logic block, second option down, and I can place it wherever I wish as well. So if I wanted to insert it right after Q1, I can select after, there's only one section here, so section 1, page 1. If you don't select a placement, it'll just add it to the end. It just keeps adding everything to the end if you do not indicate a placement. So here's a blank logic page. So now it's page 2. If I click on add block, I now have an always in the dropdown, so meaning 100% of the time. I want to conditionalize this, so I'm going to select only if. Then I can even use either that raw syntax, so like the other one I used, it was Q1 equals 1, so I can use that, or I can click on create on the far right. This will again bring that UI up that it's also available throughout the system in different locations. But if I wanted to say Q1 equals 1, hit save. Now my logic has been saved, and here's my formula. So if Q1 equals 1, right now it's not doing anything, it's just saying this is the formula. I can then go to my action dropdown and select terminate. When you do that, it says terminate using code. If I click on this dropdown, which you should, in this case, click on add new code, I can create a termination code. So I'm going to make this be a code that makes sense to me. So I'm going to say Q1 dash male. Or I could just say gender, or Q1 gender, whatever makes the most sense to you. I'll hit create. So now that's my termination code. The reason why these termination codes are important is because these codes are added to your termination report on the survey dashboard. So if I go back, I can click on the words build and edit at the top. You can see there's an arrow going down because this is a similar menu that you've seen throughout the system so far. If I click on here, here is that menu. If I go to, I'll go to Manage and Monitor just to go back to the survey dashboard. And if I go to the terms and dropouts in the fielding area, you'll see there's a number of built-in termination codes. Those are only used, well, the majority of them are only used for recoding after the fact. They're just built in and are just labeled there. But if I scroll down, you'll see that Q1 term 1 from that quick term, and then the Q1 mail. While you're in field, this report will sort in descending order. You can already see that it's already highlighted in that column and it's sorting in that order. So once you're in field, if this is the highest term point, whichever one this is, so I'll click on Q1 term 1, if that is the highest area with terms, then this will be at the top of the list. So it will behoove you to be able to make these term codes something that makes sense to you, so that if you ever do need to make any sort of changes while you're in field, you'll know, or loosen restrictions and that sort of thing, while you're in field, you'll know exactly where the majority of your terms are coming from. That's the importance of the term code. Now if I go back to my build and edit tool, clicking on build and edit on the left, I now have those two pages. Again, page 2 is the one where I added the block. Now, even within the one that I selected as the quick term, I still have the ability to go in here and change this. So I can click on the little pencil to edit it, or I can continue to type in more of the raw formula. Meaning that I can go in here and say, and maybe this one's not going to make sense, but I'm just doing it for the purposes of you being able to visually see a longer formula. Q2 underscore 1 doesn't equal 1. Again, just making that up. But you can see that you can continue adding on. It's not like you're locked into having that termination code and you have to start from scratch. It's available there. It's an open content field. You can go and update it at any point. Same for, so this was that quick term, and that would be the same is true for that regular logic block that I added. So if I wanted to do or something else, Q2 underscore 3 equals 1. Again, making that up. It'll then save. You can continue to add more blocks to any logic page if you wanted to. But there are pros and cons to that particular scenario. So if you wanted to, as I was talking about earlier, moving around terms, if you expect that there's a possibility that you might want to move a term from one place to another, you might want to just put the terms on individual pages themselves and just be able to move them around. Because if you continue to add a block here, you can, again, like I said, you can add as many termination points or even any other logical actions on a page. But if you did need to move things around, you would have to delete some of the options off of this logic page and build a whole nother one from scratch to account for what you're either moving or needing to delete. So you'd have to do some manual items, only if you expect that sort of scenario to possibly happen. If you don't expect it to happen, you can absolutely add more blocks to a page. And that is the basics of adding terminations.